Hey guys, I suppose we'll give it a little bit before people catch on. This is my first time going live, but I've really been thinking about something here lately, specifically to do with the Wyoming Food Freedom Act, red meat, and producers. We can't seem to figure out how to get that in there. I've spoke to you guys about this before in the past. It goes against the Federal Meat Inspection Act to have red meat in our Food Freedom Act, which leaves a lot of producers out in the dark, specifically our big ranchers, small ranchers, farmers, all those guys, and they would like to take advantage of the Food Freedom Act. They really would. This is one of those situations where, you know, I've spoken with the Farm Bureau boys. They're on board. Wyoming stock growers, they're on board. All of these guys are on board and want the ability to do this. But the Federal Meat Inspection Act, which was signed into law in 1906, I mean, how ridiculous is that? 1906 prohibits us. Now, granted, it's been amended since then, but either way, it prohibits these producers from being able to sell. So we've tried working with the federal government, and they keep kicking us back and keep telling us there's no way, no how you can do it. Now, granted, this is the same organization that just shut down a processor down in Torrington, a good organization that was a local business, and now they're out of business until they can get their paperwork right with the federal government. Now, this is the same federal government that allows pot to be sold in Colorado. Now, regardless of how you feel about marijuana or anything like that, realize that what we're looking at is the fact that it's illegal under federal law to do that, and it's illegal to sell beef directly out of your freezer. So that being said, if it's illegal to sell beef out of your freezer and it's illegal to have marijuana, why is the federal government turning a blind eye to one and yet threatening the state of Wyoming with a stick with the other? So our options are, we run a piece of legislation this spring that goes completely against federal law, or we do nothing. My opinion is we should definitely run the bill. We should push it all the way through, and we should end up in court with the federal government. And that's a hard bill to sell. Nobody wants to go to court with the federal government. I get it. But I don't know what our other options are. If it's a Wyoming producer selling directly to a Wyoming consumer and that beef never leaves the state of Wyoming, why should the federal government have anything to do with that? I'm a pretty simple guy, but the 10th Amendment reads pretty clear to me in the regards that the 10th Amendment states that anything not in the Constitution is strictly the rights of the people or the states. So that being the case, I'd say beef sold within the state of Wyoming to a Wyoming resident falls under the 10th Amendment, and we've got a pretty strong case in court. However, it is going to be expensive to defend those rights. But if we're going to be defending rights, and we're going to be doing it in a legitimate manner, then the state of Wyoming needs to stand up and take the federal government to court over this situation. And I can see no better option than to draft legislation that we know we're going to get sued over. Now, the big worry on this, the big scare on this whole situation has specifically to do with the fact that as soon as we pass said legislation, that the USDA is going to come in and shut us down. They're going to shut down all of our processing plants and until they get an actual USDA inspector in place. So, with that being the case, I'm going to leave it up to you guys as my bosses, because you guys are my boss. You're the ones that voted for me, and I'm your Republican nominee, and I'm going into this general election. I think we've got her locked down, but just the same, I'm confident we're going to win. Do you want me to run a piece of legislation that gets us into a mix-up with the federal government? Because that's what it amounts to. We'll end up in court. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's worth doing. So let me know your thoughts. Comment on the video. The video will be saved on here. And I've never been live before, so I don't know how this video is going to show up. Sorry about the bouncing of the screen, but I've got an amount so that I can keep my hands on the steering wheel and be a safe driver. Really like to know your opinion. Like to know where you're at on this deal. Either way, thank you much, and we'll talk to you guys later. Also, please visit the website. I don't even know how to get out of this live mode on this thing. Does anybody know how to do that that's watching? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, we'll figure it out. Nope, that didn't do it.